Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get this budget committee meeting started here. And as with all, we'll go ahead and start with a roll call of those in attendance. I'll go down through the list here. It makes this a little easier with this format. I'm not sure if this was covered in your Zoom training session, but if you're on mute and you want to just talk really quickly, if you hit your space bar on your keyboard, it will toggle you to unmute. And then when you release your finger, when you release the space bar, you will be muted. So if you just want to weigh in real quick without having to click to unmute yourself, you just press the space bar and it unmutes you temporarily, okay? So with that, we'll go ahead and do a test for folks. Councilor Byrd.
Here.
Excellent. Councilor Dale.
Here.
Excellent. Michelle Hensley.
Here.
Welcome. Councilor Hensley.
Here.
Welcome. Andrea McCracken.
Here, I was wondering if you're gonna mess it up this year.
I was practicing. I was making sure. I'm like, I'm not gonna screw it up this time.
Good work.
I am here, I hope. Councilor Parker.
He's absent.
Yes, he is absent. Just for the record, he has a meeting with the Fair Board tonight, so he's at that. Bob Patterson.
Here.
Welcome. Jack Pendleton. Yep. Councilor Spoon.
Here.
Melody Thompson. And Councilor
She's here. Melody's here. I can see her.
Yeah. Okay, so that is pretty much everybody present and accounted for. So with that, we'll go ahead to the second item on our agenda, and that is for the approval of the minutes from the January 8th, 2020 meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion. First of all, is there any questions regarding the minutes from that previous meeting? And if not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Do I have anybody to entertain that motion?
Motion.
Okay.
A second.
Who was second?
Motion was moved by Andrea and seconded by Councilor Barwick, correct? Yep. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Will that work, or do we need to actually say aye?
No, raising your hand is fine.
Okay, so it looks like everybody is in approve. Is there any nays? No nays, so that passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item, I see we'll hand things over to Julie from here, and she will go over this year's proposed budget.
Thank you, Budget Committee members. I'm actually going to turn it over to Amanda Zeiber. She's our interim city administrator. She's going to go over the budget message with you, and then I'll go over the detail with you.
Hi, good evening. This is Amanda Zeiber. Happy to see you all here tonight. Before we get started, I would just like to take a moment to thank you all for being here and for adapting to this virtual meeting. I know there are a few challenges to not being in the same room as we present and discuss the proposed budget. So as staff, we will do our best to speak clearly and to provide concise information throughout the process. While you can all see each other and we can see you, the public cannot see you. So it's very helpful if you will be speaking or asking questions, if you can state your name for the listening audience. In our efforts to continue physical distancing in our building, we have limited staff here tonight. We don't have department heads here and available, but if there are questions that require additional research or if we need to get some clarification from a department director, we'll note your questions and get responses back to you as soon as possible. Julie will be collecting questions and making sure that everyone receives the questions and answers together. Most of you have been on this committee before, but we do always like to remind everyone that this budget document refers to positions, not to individual employees. Additionally, there are expenses reflected in the budget that are part of collective bargaining agreements, and it's generally not appropriate in this venue to discuss labor-related issues. So if we do stray down that path, and it's really easy to do that, into something that's outside of the budget review process, as staff will try to gently guide us back to our task at hand tonight. So the proposed budget that you have in front of you has a pretty lengthy budget message. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I did want to just cover a few things before we go into the budget detail. I am pleased, on behalf of our city staff, to present a fiscally responsible budget that continues to provide the quality of public services Canby citizens have come to enjoy and expect. As part of the last two budgets, fiscal years 18-19 and 19-20, we identified a need to start taking some steps for succession planning, including adding key positions within the organization. It was noted in these budgets that the need was great and the long-term benefit would outweigh the short-term cost. As we're nearing the end of the two-year strategy, we are also coming to an end of the current succession backfill process. At this time, most of the known key retirements have occurred and the transition to successors has completed. We thank you for your support in allowing us to plan ahead for that. It's definitely paid off. We started the budget process for fiscal year 2021 in a much different place than where we are now today. The city has seen strong revenue growth over the past few years, and the economy remains strong through the third quarter of fiscal year 19-20. Due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are anticipating several reduced revenue sources for the last quarter of fiscal year 19-20 and moving forward into fiscal year 2021. Some of those key areas include gas tax, transient tax, fines and citations, and pool and library revenues. Commercial and residential development has experienced a strong rebound over the last 5 years, and based on current market conditions, we expect that this trend will continue, although likely at a slower pace due to the pandemic. Throughout the budget document, you will see areas where revenue reductions are reflected. Each department to get us to this process submitted proposed budgets and identified opportunities for budget savings and deferred or eliminated staffing or programs during this next fiscal year. The result of efforts is a budget that draws on reserves for one-time expenditures only and continues to deliver quality services to the community. Staff worked diligently to propose a budget that is as realistic and accurate as possible and places the city in the best possible fiscal positions for the years ahead. We may have challenges in the next 12 to 18 months that cause us to reevaluate and reprioritize based on fluctuating information and the changing needs in the city and the community. In the fiscal year 2021 budget that is proposed, we focused on areas that could allow us to best serve the community, such as through the library and economic development departments. These departments will provide resources and programs to support community members and businesses, which will be increasingly more important as we start to reopen our city and recover from the impacts of COVID-19. At this time, I'm going to hand this back over to Julie Blums, who, with other members of the Finance Department, has spent many hours over the past few months meeting with department heads and running numbers to get us to a balanced budget. She'll provide some general budget information and then take us through the general fund and other funds. Both her and I are also available at any point during this process to answer any questions you might have about specific revenues and expenditures. And we again thank you very much for your time and efforts this evening and through this budget process. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. So tonight, we're going to work our way through the general fund and some of the smaller special revenue funds. And we should be able to get through them all tonight. That's the goal anyway. First of all, I want to start out just kind of giving you an overview for the general fund. When we started the budget process in January, February, things were strong, our budget was strong. We thought, oh great, we're going to be able to add some services or beef up services. And that's how we started our budget. And then March hit and we had to take a detour. So any new asks that staff requested this year, we did have to cut back out from what our initial budget was. So this is a status quo budget. There is nothing new in here from last year. There is the money in here for to fund the PERS UAL side account that we talked about at the work session with council. We currently have almost $229,000 sitting in our PERS reserve that has already been expensed. It's waiting there for us to do something with. And the remaining $271,000 will be charged proportionally out to the rest of the departments to get us to the $500,000 to deposit with PERS in August. That's still in the budget. You guys can discuss that. And I received questions from Jack, and I received one from Councillor Dale. And because I received so few, I told them I would just answer them tonight as we went along. Jack was asking about the PERS reserve. Hopefully I just answered that for you. As long as we do move that money over to PERS, that line item in the budget in our reserve balance will go to zero. As I said before, no new positions, no new programs. Each department really worked hard to make cuts so that we could keep our vital operations going. The revenue projections are, I usually have a cloudy crystal ball, and it's even cloudier right now. I have tried to look at where we're at, and between the end of this year and the beginning of next fiscal year, I've cut about 25% of the revenue in certain areas where we are going to be hit the hardest. A transit tax will be one. That's a payroll tax. We have so many people and employers not working right now, so there will be very little transit tax coming in for this quarter. Transient room tax, the hotel tax, again, nobody's vacationing anywhere, so that will be reduced. Our citation revenue is down. Our officers are focusing on critical need things and not writing traffic citations right now. We're trying to keep them safe and not expose them to anything needlessly that we don't need to. So our citation revenue is down. And gas tax is the other one. Not only are our prices down, nobody's driving anywhere, so nobody's buying gas. So that's another area we're going to see a big hit in. Jack asked about property taxes and state shared revenue. I don't see an issue with property taxes for this next fiscal year. The values on property have been set as of January, so we should be okay this year. Where we're going to see the hit probably will be next year. I don't know that it will be that big because we now have a big enough gap between our assessed value and real market value that it might not even be a blip, but we'll have better data next fall on what we're looking at there. And then we don't receive state income tax of any kind, so we're safe from that one. Luckily, we really don't get a lot of money from the state, so the cuts that they're doing aren't really going to flow through that much to us. Luckily, we have our own good revenue streams. So, and the one thing with the transit tax reductions, our new transit director did apply for CARES grant money, and we were awarded funds. So we're hoping that we'll at least make up half, 3/4 of the lost revenue that we're projecting with the CARES grant. So that will help immensely there too. And then Jack also asked about benefits, if we think our benefit costs are going to increase because of COVID. At this point, who knows? Our rates are set pretty much for this next year. So again, if we're going to see changes, we're going to see them next year in 21-22. Any questions so far on the overview? Okay, let's get into the, oh,
Julie, just real quick.
yes.
I had a little note here and I missed it. Just for the sake of record keeping, I wanted to just mention for the recording that a decision was made due to the extenuating circumstances for this year's budget committee meetings, that we would just keep the same chair and vice chair for this year as we had last year.
Thank you,
We did
Jason.
not see that there was any concern with that, so just for the record, that was the decision of the committee.
Thank you. I did forget to mention that. The responses I received were favorable in just leaving it as is for this year, and not trying to juggle around in possible new chairs. So I appreciate those of you who responded. All right, so let's get into the main part of this. We're going to start on page 44 of your budget. Now, if you're looking at your PDF, it's not going to be page 44 of the PDF. It will probably be around page 49 of your PDF. All right, so we're going to start with administration. This is the department where we have our city administrator, our city recorder, city attorney, some of our assistant city administrator time. Again, this is really a very status quo budget. I did budget for a new city administrator in this budget as well. A couple of things that we cut back on to help with the reductions were a facilitator for council goal setting. We cut that out for next year. Reduced some training just based on timing of when we might get a city administrator, that sort of thing. And there wasn't a lot in here to cut, so that's where we're at with that department. Jack asked about FTE in this department. Both the FTE and the dollars are down. Again, that's because of just timing of not having a city administrator with us right now. So the FTE numbers get adjusted for however many months somebody's going to be here. So next year, you'll see them go back up a little bit. Any questions on administration? You know I can go really fast, so please speak up, or we're going to be done by 7:30. All right, moving on to HR. Again, status quo. We do have a new HR confidential assistant. Josh left us back in February, and we have a new employee. She's doing wonderful. We're excited to have her. I know Amanda's very excited to have her. But no changes in this. The one thing that we did cut out of this department was our staff holiday party for this year. We're hoping that if revenues do better than what I've projected, that we'll have enough money to be able to do that. But that's one of those extra things that we love to do, and it's great for staff. But if it's that or cutting something operational, we're going to take this one out. So, did someone raise their hand? No? Okay. All right. Finance for my department. Again, no real changes. We're doing a one-year extension on our audit contract. We will be going out for an RFP next year. So our audit costs are a little bit more for next year. I had originally asked for some money for new chairs for a couple of my staff and some sit-stand desks, but we pulled those out again because they're not absolutely critical. So that's what we pulled out of this department. All right, court. Looking at this one, you can see the revenue is down quite a bit. We're right now at the end of April, we were sitting at $350,000 in revenue. Normally, we bring in around $500,000 a year in revenue in court. So, and we have no court for the last half of March and all of April, all of May. We are starting court up again the beginning of June. We're going to be doing it remotely. We'll not have defendants coming to the building. We're going to do it all virtually and through phone calls. So we'll see how things play out once we get to that point. Questions?
Yeah, Julie, so I think with the way this is sort of set up, we'll go through about 4 of these items, and then we'll just take a little longer pause just to make sure that no one's having technical difficulties to see if they have any questions. So,
Okay.
real quickly, does anybody have any questions? Wave your hands erratically or do a backflip, and I'll be sure to we'll be sure to call you out here.
I want to see the backflips.
I would like to too. You won't see one from me here. Then you would need to actually elect a new chair. That is for sure. No? Okay, I think you can keep going.
All right. Planning and building departments. So they were looking at some permitting software, different companies, just kind of seeing what was out there, and we're hoping to be able to get some permitting software. But again, when that was a new ask, and that has been taken out for this year, but it may come up again next year if we do have some money next year, just to help them have an automated system for permitting. Right now, they do everything by hand and in Excel, so it would be nice at some point to bring them into the 21st century and let them have automation. Bob?
Yes, I'm looking at traffic study, 81 grand,
Yes.
and then down to 32 next year. I guess I've forgotten about that. Was that is that for the railroad crossings?
No, what that is when new developers come in, mostly out in the industrial area, there's
yeah.
traffic studies that have to be done. They
Right.
pay for it, but they pay us for it, but we have to pay the engineer for it, so we have both sides of the transaction.
I'd forgotten that. It just jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The other thing I will say about this department that we did talk about, I believe, mid-year was we did add another associate planner to this department with Matilda retiring, Dave retiring, and Brian retiring. We have all new staff in this department, and we're just being hammered. And even through COVID, we are still being hammered with construction. I am amazed at what is coming in the door, or through the mail, I should say, even during this time. And so they really needed some help to be able to keep up and give the service to the developers that they're needing and paying for. So we did add that. That person will start next Monday. So we're excited to get them on board and getting some relief for that department. Okay. I'm going to move on to police, which is page 57, 58. So they do have some grants coming in again this year for different enforcement duties that they do every year. And again, their budget status quo, they had requested an additional officer and a part-time records clerk that, again, we had to pull out from the original version. There's also no increase in overtime this year. We had to hold it status quo for balancing the budget. And we were looking at paving the lower parking lot at the PD, and we're just going to put that off for now. It's not essential. It would be nice to have, but we can wait on that. Jack, you had a question about the PERS contributions here. So you're going to see this actually in every department. So that additional money that we need to charge to be able to send over to PERS for our account, every department's PERS line item is going to be higher than what it normally is because we have to expense that additional cost. And it's all proportional based on personnel and the salaries, and because the police department has the largest number of personnel, the bump is really noticeable in their department, whereas it's not necessarily in others. But that's what that's for. Next year it will go back to normal. Okay. Let's move on to parks. Projects for this year, we're going to really try and get that master plan update done. That will be paid for with SDCs, so there's no general fund impact for that project. We're going to get the splash park finished. That'll be exciting. Not that anybody can use it right now, but we'll get it done. So it'll be there when we're all back out into the real world. Jeff is looking to replace the play equipment at Locust Park. It needs to be upgraded and replaced for current safety standards, and it's quite old as well. And then the other thing we did in this department was we are not going to hire any seasonals this year. One, we're getting a really late start, and two, we just don't have enough vehicles to keep the social distancing to add more staff in that department. So we're going to see how we can manage without any seasonals this year for the parks. Good. I'm going to do a check-in here. Okay. Cemetery. That department is just, it's running as usual. We had put some money in to do some painting and some building repairs, and we're going to cut back on that just because of budget constraints. So they're going to do just the minimum that they absolutely have to do out there to keep it running and looking okay. All right, economic development. So they received a grant this year to do a master plan for the logging road trail. And we received the money in the current fiscal year, but the work is not going to be completed until next year. So that's their big project for next year. As you all know, the summer events have been canceled. So when the budget was put together, that had not been, the decision had not been made by the governor what to do with all of that yet. So those expenses and revenue are still in here for next year. But obviously we won't spend them because we're not going to get the sponsorships and vendor revenue either. So, Sarah?
Thanks, Julie. I didn't realize that that's what the grant was for. I'm just curious, why is the logging road and economic development grant instead of through the Parks Department, and how's that going to affect the department's work?
Great question. We really debated on what to do with this. It is because economic development, Calvin especially, went after the grant, and planning will be working on this project. The majority of the work will be done in planning. We just decided to leave the revenue and leave the expense in economic development. They just offset each other. So rather than trying to run it through Jeff's budget when he's not going to have that big of a role in it.
Okay, so it's not going to be an economic development department project. It'll largely be a planning development project.
Yes, I think they will play a role in it, but it's not, they're not going to manage it, is my understanding. Mayor?
Thank you. Yeah, to add on to that as well, Sarah, the whole grant piece for that came together as well because it was a kind of a joint piece between Parks and Bike and Ped. And so then we kind of parlayed that into a tourism piece because of bike tourism and things like that. And so that was the other reason why we were able to kind of angle it through Calvin and the economic development piece from that angle as well.
Yeah, I'm excited that it's happening. I just wanted to make sure I understood the connection between the departments,
Yeah.
but I'm glad we're doing it. It's a great asset to our community. So if there's any way we can improve it, that'd be great.
I did just learn yesterday that we did receive another grant. Andrea, I'll get you in just a sec, okay? We did receive another grant for economic development 2 days ago that they're putting in for to do more work out at Zion in the older part of the cemetery to do some repairs and cleaning of graves out there. Andrea?
Okay, so you might be covering this, but with the cancellation of the Canby Independence Day celebration and Light Up the Night, how is that additional revenue going to affect the city of Canby? Or not getting that additional revenue, sorry.
We actually, those events cost the city more than we take in, so it's not going to make a difference as far as not getting the revenue because we're not going to be expending the money either for those programs. We have spent some money this year already because it takes months to plan this, so they've been working on it, but we were making sure that anything that was purchased for the Independence Day celebration was generic enough it could be used next year. No years on it so that it could be used in future years as well.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Jack, did you have your hand up? No, okay. All right, and then the last department in the general fund is the unallocated department. And in this department, I did a slight reduction in business license revenue for next year, just because we don't know how many businesses are gonna make it out of this. We're hoping everybody does, but that's probably not realistic. So I did reduce that just a little bit, not the 25% I did in other areas, but just a little bit. Again, this is where money will come out of for the PERS UIL account. And then the other big change in this area is our transfer to the library. Amanda talked about this earlier in her message, that we're really trying to focus our funds in areas that will help the community the most come out of this pandemic and provide resources to them. And one area that is really big in that is the library. There are the city's living room, and lots of people use it for resources. They run a WIC program out of the library. They have lots of different programs to help the community, and so we really felt it was important to make sure that they could stay funded at the level they are this year. And to do that, we had to increase our transfer from the general fund to the library to keep them supported at the same level that they are for this fiscal year. And part of that is they have no fine revenue coming in. So their revenue went down as well. So they're getting hit twice as hard. So you will see the transfer to their department is $143,000 this year versus was it 75 we did in the current year. And we picked that number because it is equal to the administrative overhead that they pay back to the general fund. So it's kind of a net zero for them. We decided that was a fair way to come up with how much we could transfer back to them. Any questions on that?
Oh, yeah, we do have a few questions there. Well, yeah, Tim, you're not toggled on. You're still muted.
On the Macs, the space bars don't always do it right. Julie, can you remind us about Canby utility in lieu of taxes?
Those are in lieu of property taxes because they're a quasi-government. They are exempt from paying property tax to us. So this is an in lieu of paying that property tax because they aren't really a government entity, but they kind of are.
Right, and can you remind us about the big change between fiscal year 19 and 20, and then the projected? We went from 838,000 down to a few hundred.
Oh, I apologize. This is a typo. I found after I had printed it and sent it out, the total on the very first page that has the summary is correct. This page is not. The amount they will be paying will be the same as it is this year. So when you get your final version, it will have the correct number on this page. Thank you, Tim.
Gotcha.
I forgot to bring that up.
Very good, thank you.
I think Melody had a question.
Oh, Melody, it's not work. Your thing isn't working either. You're gonna have to unmute. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
We can't hear you, Melody.
No.
Sorry.
She could type her question into the chat.
Oh, okay.
If that helps. Okay.
Was Tim's question similar to what you were asking? Is that what it was? And that
Okay.
took care of it? Okay.
All right. Thank you. So that's it for the general fund. I told you we were going to get through this quick. You have to have questions. I know you guys do.
I'm surprised we made it through the cemetery so quickly.
Parker's not here. We do that just to torment him.
That was what I was going to say, Tim. Mrs. Parker.
He told me to be his eyes and ears. I'm going to tell him that we spent a lot of time on cemetery.
There you go. Julie, are you going to cover now or later what the hit is to reserves?
Well, we were able to balance our operational expenses to our operational revenue. That was our number one goal, because that's something our financial policies state, is that operational revenue needs to cover our operational expense. So we met that. The second goal is to try to stay between 30 and 40% of our reserve balance. We are dipping below that in this proposed budget. And that's mainly because of the money we're going to send to PERS. So we're dipping into the reserves to do that. And by doing that, we will get a 25% match from PERS. And that money will be used to offset future rate increases for us. So even though we're not holding the money, it's still working for us as a city. And it goes into an account that is specifically earmarked for us. It's not spread across to anybody else. It goes against our rate increases.
So it's to our financial advantage to go ahead and transfer that money in for the sake of the match.
For the sake of the match, yes. If there was no match, that would be different. But 25% free money, that's a once-in-a-lifetime deal.
So how much then is the reserve hit?
We're going to be down to about 27%.
And in rough dollars, do you recall how much that is?
It's about 2.7 million.
Is where we'll stand, right?
Yes.
And so how much did we drop down?
We were at just about 30, so we're eating in about 350,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Of which 229 we already had earmarked for this purpose. So
For PERS.
yes.
Great. And out of that, then we're we're going to get $55K match, so very good.
125.
Was it 25 or 50% match that you said?
25%, so of 500,000. Isn't that
Right, I was
125?
just computing the part that was on reserves.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to move on to the really exciting funds. Okay. So, page 75, our transient room tax fund. This is a fairly new fund. We've had it for a year now, and this is commonly referred to as the hotel tax. And, we have Motel 6, and then we have the Fair Board, and those are our two main ones, and then we have whatever is reported through Travelocity and Expedia and, all of those online providers. And again, I did reduce the revenue on this just because nobody's staying in the hotel, and now that the fair won't be able to happen either, they aren't going to have their typical revenue that they do during the summer that would come to us for the transient room tax. So, we're just going to kind of have to see. It's hard to predict because we don't have a good quarter behind us for me to know really where this is going to go. But we did the best we could. We're seeing numbers coming from the league anywhere between 17 and 25% in revenue hits. So I think I tried to be conservative. I'd rather underestimate how much revenue we're going to get and get more than overestimate and not get enough. So, and this is the fund that we use for tourism. So 70% of the money that comes in on this fund can be used directly for tourism activities and promotion, and then the other 30% can be used more for, last year we used it for staff time to help with the Independence Day celebration, because that does bring in people from outside. It is a tourism event, and so we used some of that money to help pay for staff time for putting that event on. Any questions on that one?
I would just want to say for the record that, the financial team with the city and city council and members of this committee have been pretty conservative regarding the budgets in the previous years. Mm-hmm. And I think Canby is going to weather this storm pretty well. I have a feeling that there are a lot of other state and local municipalities, both in Oregon and across the nation, that are going to be in a lot stickier situation than we are. And so, just for the record, kudos to the folks before us who have helped get us into this position.
Yeah, our big goal was we did not want to cut people. That was huge for us, and so we were able to get there. It was tough, a little painful at times, but we did, and I really think we have a budget that we can live within for the next year. And if revenue comes in better, great. We can look at mid-year adjustments for some of the things that people asked for that we might need. But for now, this is what we can live within, and I think it's fiscally responsible and will keep us in a place where our reserves are still healthy. Yes, we're going to dip into them a little, but they're still in a really good place. And as Jason said, I think we're in a much better place than a lot of cities are going to be facing this year. So I'm very grateful. All right, we're going to move on to the SDC fund, which is page 76. The exciting things in this fund this year are, I mentioned this earlier, we'll be transferring money out to parks for the master plan and to finish up the splash pad project. We will be using SDCs for the North Locust Street, Knott Street, and Pine Street projects that we have. You'll see more about them next week when we get to the street fund. And then we're also going to be using some SDCs for to finish up the Ivy Street pump station that's going on right now, and go towards the upsizing of the sewer on Ivy from 2nd to 13th. We're going to upsize that before all the work is done on the road, so we're not cutting into it 2 years after we have a brand new road. So we're going to try to do this in the right order here. Any questions? Okay, Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund, basically same as last year. We're looking to do an interfund loan out of that fund to the library, just like we've done the last couple of years, that the library will then pay back in January when they get their tax revenue. Other than that, the money just sits there until the cemetery is full, and then that money is used for ongoing maintenance when there's no new revenue coming in. So it'll just sit there and earn money. And forfeiture fund, this is money forfeited from different police activities, federal or local. And this year, I know they used some of the money. We never budget revenue here. You're actually by law not allowed to, because we have no idea what might come in. That's one of those kind of windfall things if you do get money from this. So there's nothing really earmarked for these funds that are still in here, but we always budget to spend all of it. That way they have the capability, if something comes up and that they need to get, they can, and it meets the requirements for this fund, they're able to go ahead and use that. Okay, facilities. This is our fund, pays for janitorial, HVAC repairs, anything facility related. The revenue on this fund, all of our internal service funds, so our facilities fund, fleet fund, and tech services fund, they're all funded from all the other departments in the city based on different criteria. Facilities, it's based on square footage for each department is the factor. And fleet, it's based on their work order system. So they have a work order system. They keep track all year long of what they're working on, and then we allocate those costs based on the work that they've actually done. And then for tech services, this year we changed up a little bit how we're allocating those costs. For our staff time and our contractor for Kintech, we are now allocating those costs based on work orders. They have a work order system now that's keeping track of what departments are needing what. So we were able to get a better handle on those costs and who's generating them. So our personal services and our contract services, we're going to allocate based on their work order system, and then their materials and capital will be allocated based on the number of electronic devices in each department. We thought that was a fairer way to split up those costs.
Hey, Julie, I have a real quick question. With the facilities and stuff, I'm assuming that cleaning is part of that?
Yes.
Comes out of there?
Yes.
Has there been any consideration taken into whether there's going to be increases? I mean, part of this is going to, they talk about doing extra cleaning and such. Do you foresee an impact when the facilities start to open up regarding extra expenses for doing extra cleaning and such?
Well, we did just receive our quote for this next year, and it went up marginally. I mean, very, very little for just our regular cleaning. What we're doing right now with our janitorial service, any extra cleaning they're doing related or due to the COVID virus and trying to keep staff safe and making sure that we're following safety protocols. We're charging those to a project for the COVID that we will try to get reimbursed through FEMA. At some point, we're being told FEMA reimbursements are looking like they'll be at least 2 years out. But we are keeping track of them, and we will submit for whatever we are eligible to submit for with any expenses related to that. Any cleaning expenses, we're keeping track of, buying hand sanitizer, masks, extra cleaning with our buses. I see you, Bob. That sort of thing. So we are tracking all of that.
As we move, into phase 1 in our county and then into phase 2, have we anticipated the need for potentially some of the staff to be wearing PPE and the associated cost for that?
Right now, we have staff who are working from home, and we have some staff who do come into the office. It's a ghost town around here when you do come into the office, and we are required to wear masks while we're here. We have to sign in and out. We have hand washing protocols, cleaning protocols, those sorts of things. So at this point, we're all wearing masks already. As far as full PPE like first responders would need, I don't believe there's any. I'm going to let Amanda answer this.
Hi, thank you. I've been pretty involved in these discussions with other cities, with our EOC. We are currently providing most of the PPE for our employees. A lot of people are bringing their own masks from home. We are anticipating that there will be some additional costs as we move forward, depending on what the requirements are for opening to the public. Most of those things we've been doing over the last couple months in preparation, which is getting masks and having them available and gloves. We've already installed sneeze shields and protective shields in all of our public desks, our reception areas. So we have a pretty good start, and we will just continue to watch what the requirements are for the workplace and adjust accordingly, but we do anticipate that we will be providing some things for employees as we move forward.
And testing of employees if necessary? There's been a lot of talk of that in the private sector, obviously, and has that been addressed?
We are watching to see what the requirements are, and we'll adjust accordingly based on whatever they are. Currently, we have, as Julie mentioned, sign-in sheets at all of our facilities, and employees have been signing in and out, and that will help in case there's a positive for contact tracing. And we do have thermometers at all locations as well, and employees are either self-checking themselves before they come in or as they come in to try to minimize any exposure to our staff.
Thanks.
Really quickly, I know as part of that whole contact trace thing, as far as keeping records of people, like when the facilities open back up, citizens that are coming in or individuals that are coming in to interact with somebody at a desk, as far as keeping their information available as well?
If that's one of the requirements, that is what we will do. Whatever we're required to do, we will be doing. Okay.
So it looks like Melody has texted in a question. Do you see that, Julie?
I think she's saying she sent it just to you, Jason. Is that right, Melody? Yeah. We can't hear you, Jason.
Interesting. Haha! I learned something new. Wait, no, where'd it go? Melody, I'm assuming that you want me to ask this question? See, here we go. We're getting it. So from Melody, it says, could you ask, where does the city fall in the range of businesses and offices, etc., plans outlined by the governor? For example, office workers who can work from home, and are they supposed to continue? Does that make sense?
I'll offer some information, and she can let us know if I'm answering this question appropriately or not. We, as city staff, we are putting together our plan for reopening to the public. Here in Canby, we have continued to be open behind the scenes. We just have been closed to the public. Most of our employees that can work from home continue to work from home, and we'll keep that moving forward until it's absolutely necessary to bring people in. We have been really lucky in that we were able to ramp up some equipment and some abilities for people to work from home, and it's so far working out really well. And so we'll continue that until we fully open to the public, and we have to have people come back.
Okay, looks like that took care of it. Looks like we have another question coming in.
So my question is, do we have money set aside for those contingencies, for those dollars that are going to need to be spent?
We have some money in our risk management fund, our department, minimal. We're currently working with we have an activated EOC, a unified EOC with fire and police in the city. And as long as there's an active EOC, they can request PPE as we need it. And so that's where we're currently getting that. And we're using that for as long as we're able to do that. But we do have some funds, yes.
Okay, were there any other questions regarding that?
Seeing none.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to move on to the fleet department. So, one thing we are doing in this department this year is, and this is kind of in conjunction with our transit fund that we've talked about the last couple years with our transit director, Julie, retiring. We had money in to get a backfill in here for her for a little bit. We had a whole 3 weeks overlap, which was good, but it was also in the middle of COVID, so I'm not sure they actually spent a ton of time together. They did a lot of work over the phone and via computer. But one of the other things that we're doing, because we do have another employee in that department who has stated they're going to retire, is we're looking at the structure of transit and of our fleet services for transit. Transit takes up a lot of time for our fleet mechanics. And, you know, there's always competing priorities between police vehicles, buses, city vehicles, that sort of thing. And so what we're looking to do is add an additional position that will be split between transit and fleet that is not really a mechanic, but is more, I think we're calling it like a service writer. So it will be a position that will ferry buses and vehicles back and forth between facilities to have work done, in between mechanic shops if needed, where work is done. This person would be the person to go and be picking up parts, doing a lot of non-technical mechanical work to free up time for our two mechanics to actually be able to work on the vehicles. And the cost for that position is going to be split 50-50 between fleet and transit. So we're going to see how this works. Try it out and see if it makes a difference, because we really need to have somebody doing that kind of work so that our two mechanics can really concentrate on working on the vehicles. When we put this together, Robert had put in for an increase in fuel costs, which now I think will go down now that gas is way down. So that will be nice to have a little bit of a cushion in there for fuel costs this year. But other than that, their budget again is just a status quo budget.
$100,000 jump in internal revenue for the fleet. You might have already spoken to it, but I didn't catch it.
The revenue in the facilities, fleet, and tech fund are, it is just enough to cover their expenses with a little bit of contingency. We never keep a reserve in these three funds because they're internal service funds. We don't want to overfund them because those are charges that go out to other departments. So the revenue coincides with the expenditures, and because we are adding this position, and like I said, we did increase some fuel costs in a couple little areas, their revenue is going to go up proportionally to their expenditure increases as well. The one thing with fleet is that we do this estimate at this time of the year based on the last 12 months of actuals, and then next year in April, we do a true up. So we go back and we look at all their work orders for the prior 12 months, and we true up all the departments based on the actual work that has been done. So some departments will get additional charges, some will reduce their charges, just depending on, you know, how much work is being done. If we have a bunch of buses go down that we didn't anticipate, Transit's going to get a higher charge than what we originally thought. Does that answer your question?
Well, I was poking at it's $100,000 jump. So are you saying the bulk of that is for the new staff position?
Well, really, the budget for, sorry, let me get on the right fund here. Some of it is for the new position. There's increases in here, and then we do have some increases in their materials and services budget as well. I really think that once we bring this position on, I think we're going to see some of these costs come down. When we put this together, you know, it was put together based on how things work right now. And right now, we're having to contract work out because the mechanics don't necessarily have enough time to do it. So I think we're going to see this particular budget look very different in their actuals than what we've got here as their budget. I just don't know where it's going to be different, but I can almost guarantee it's going to be different. So that will also affect the revenue that comes in. So if they don't spend all this money, they won't get all that revenue. They offset each other.
Looks like, does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, close enough for now. It's just a remarkable increase.
Is there a possibility of getting a little more detailed breakdown as to sort of why there is that 100,000 jump in that line item as part of like the parking lot item for next
Yes.
meeting?
Yes.
Would that work, Tim?
Yeah, that'd be very good. Thank you, Jason.
50,000 of it is from the position. So half of the jump is right there. The other half is in materials, but I can get you some better comparisons there if you want.
Actually, 50-50 split makes me happy.
Okay. All right. And then finally, our tech services fund. We have our normal replacement schedule for computers. They work on Valerie has a list of everyone's computers and when they get replaced, and so every year she orders a certain number, and we're just all on a rotation, so that's just her normal computer order. And then we also have money in there for a new website. We had that in there for this year. We just haven't gotten as far as we thought. We've done an RFP. Have we picked? Okay. I'm going to let Amanda talk about that a little bit.
We just have some very new current information. We did go out for a RFP for a new website developer, and There was a slight delay because we were in the process of interviewing some of the selected firms when we closed down to the public and stopped any in-person meetings. So that was on delay, but we did just recently select a firm. We're entering into an agreement with them, and they'll hit the ground running, and we'll hopefully have a new website up and going in the next couple of months. But some of the expenses will be in this year and probably more of them in next year.
Okay. Other than that, that is it for the tech services fund. That is everything I had for tonight. Do you have questions? Jack, do you have your hand up? Oh, okay. All right. So next week, we're going to go over our street fund, transit, library, our swim center, and our sewer fund. So we'll do those, and then we will, when that meeting is complete, we'll also do our public hearings that we're required to do. We'll have two of them, one to allow comment on the budget, and then one for our state revenue sharing. And then when that meeting's concluded, we will switch over and open our urban renewal budget committee meeting, and we will do that budget as well next week. So I do not have any follow-up questions that I need to get back to anybody on. This feels so weird. You guys always have to-dos for me, so status quo budgets are easy.
I guess just real quick, so as Julie said, that kind of wraps up for what was planned to cover tonight. Tim, I just want to circle back. Did that answer your question, or do we need to leave that breakdown in the parking lot for next time?
Oh, that's the detail I was after. I was trying to get a handle on how much of that increase was due to the new staff position.
So you're good.
That sounds like about 50K. The new staff position, I will say, is a surprise in a status quo budget. Council had not been advised of that, to my recollection.
Nope.
So but that's, yes, Jason, that was what I was after.
I will say to that, this is actually something that was in this current year's budget as well. We just have not gotten to the point of being able to hire it. It's something was part of the plan with the retirements that we knew were coming. That it was something that we thought we'd probably have to do. And so we included money in the budget for it this year, but we just haven't gotten to the point where we could actually pull the trigger on it. So it's not going to happen until next year.
Okay, were there any other, this opens up the discussion part of our meeting. Were there any questions that people had? Any items you'd like to add to the parking lot that we need to follow up for next time that that's on your mind at the moment? Wow. I don't even know if we all realize what day of the week it is. I don't know about you, but it feels like it's Wednesday every day. I keep putting my trash bin out on the wrong day. It's crazy. So, as per usual, if you do have some questions, go ahead and send them to Julie, and she will work on those for next time. Be sure not to discuss anything via email, or obviously you're not going to be chatting in person because you will be struck down if you do. So it would have to happen via email or phone. That is a no-no. Don't do that because it's all part of the public record. So real quickly, one last time. No, I don't see anybody raising their hand for questions. With that, I think,
Jason?
Julie, did you folks have anything more from City Hall there?
Hi, Jason. This is Amanda, and I would just like an opportunity really quickly before you end the meeting tonight to offer maybe a little bit more information on that fleet position that might help you understand where we're coming from. So at the beginning of this meeting, we had talked about a couple-year plan to work out our succession planning. And a couple years ago is when we were first notified that we had some people in transit that would be retiring in these upcoming years. Part of the challenges that we were faced with is that we have one of those staff people, the director already retired and we replaced that position. The other transit coordinator position that we have is filled by a person who has a lot of talent and skills that we might not find in one person going forward. And that's that we have a person with some very strong administrative skills and transit experience, also has a background as a bus driver and a CDL. So that position does a lot of assisting our fleet department in running buses and doing some very low-level maintenance work or coordination with the bus drivers. It's probably unlikely that we'll be able to find those same combination in one person again. Also, as we have switched to a new transit director, there's a little bit of restructuring that's been done and with the different skills and the different people coming in and out. So we will be looking and have been planning on splitting that one position into two and restructuring the administrative piece. And then on the fleet side, over the last couple of years, as Julie mentioned, there's been some work that's been contracted out. We have a lot of competing responsibilities coming from different departments. Transit's a priority department to keep buses on the road. Police are a priority to keep cop cars on the road. And then Public Works, we need to have our equipment going all the time. So a lot of times if we don't have the staff in fleet, we have to contract some of that work out. So having this service writer, or however that position ends up being titled, available to help do some of the administrative functions, primarily to transit, but also to all other fleet functions, will allow us to keep our mechanics actually turning wrenches. And we do think that, as Julie mentioned, that will save some money in contract work. This is just part of the succession planning that we've been doing over the last couple of years, and now's the time when we actually have the person leaving, so it's becoming real in fiscal year 2021.
Yeah, no, I think we get the justification. It just would have been better not to find out about it through a line item question. It would have been better to have been briefed earlier or up in the budget message, but I think we get it.
Got it. Understood. Thank you very much.
Okay, so with that, is there any other questions? Awesome. Well, I think with that, we will go ahead and recess this meeting until 6 p.m. on May 21st. Do I have to do anything else, or does that make it official?
That makes it official. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and
Fantastic.
stay safe.
See you all later, and some of you need to work on the backgrounds in your video stream. It's pretty